Guys, welcome back to our third game of the Hunter Analysis series. Right now we're going up against the Warriors, so quite an interesting matchup. The Warrior in TGT has fallen off a little bit, I feel. Cards like Bolster, etc. didn't really contribute too well to its consistency in the arena. It's still very possible to do well with it. Like a friend of mine hit 12 wins with the Warrior the moment TGT hits, so it's definitely possible, but I feel like it's slightly more difficult now. That's the pool. So, you know, when we meet someone like this, we're 2-0, our opponent's most likely also 2-0, so we're going to be expecting some cards like Fiery Borax to be a thing, you know, maybe a Death Spite here or there, so should have a quality deck. Right now, Fairy Dragon Keep, fairly easy. As we said earlier, if you do not have a coin, you need to really dig for those 1-drops, so keep 1 2-drop, look for the rest, and we hit a 2-drop and a 3-drop. It's not bad by any means, it's just really great if you do hit that 1-drop. We don't hit it now, but yeah, it's alright. You don't lose the game by not hitting a 1-drop. You're just not in an automatically great position, you know, which is why not, you know, like if you can hit your 1-drop, might as well try to hit, might as well try to just be in a good position. So here we can play the Flame Juggler or the Fairy Dragon. Normally I'd like to play a 2-3 early on because they have more chance of killing stuff like Loot Hoarder and Pint-Sized Summoner for free. Now, however, because Flame Juggler does have an activation effect, like a Battle Cry, I'd rather just keep it in my hand for when it could be potentially useful. Okay, so our opponent played a Gilblin Stalker, which is a good example of how good Stalker is. If he had played Shattered Sun Cleric here on our Fairy Dragon and free killed his Stalker, he was in a very bad position. We chose to develop the Ogre here because the Ogre just has the best stats early on. It just challenges most other 4-drops a little bit better. Now, if we had played Scarlet Crusader here, we would have had a very, very nice trade. We could have just Shattered Sunned our Scarlet Crusader and we're already in a really good position. Now, the Ogre could still work, so, I mean, the play remains the same. We are going to Shattered Sun the Ogre, see if it can hit the Frothing. You know, we always like to introduce a little bit of a reverse psychology with the Ogre, you know, hit the face, make the Ogre think that you want to go face, and then, haha, you know, it hits the minion. GG, well played. So, I want to point out again that at the end of our turn 4 here, we have a 5-1 and a 3-2. So, our opponent, it's fairly hard to match that with 4 mana. Now, our opponent does still have the coin. He did opt not to use the coin earlier, so it's coming out here. And here is that Fiery Borax we were talking about earlier. So there we go. Hit. He does it in the right sequence, of course. Well, not the right sequence, but the right targets. Take less face damage if you can. Normally, playing a 2-drop and a 3-drop for 5 mana is slightly better than just a 4-drop, but because of that Fiery Borax, there isn't really much use of playing the Flame Juggler here. It'll just die to the Borax. So I'd rather just develop the Yeti, get 4 or 5 stats on the board rather than 3-1. Because yes, that Flame Juggler will take out part of the Borax, but it's still just stats that you're not going to be able to work with. So I'd rather have 4 power and 5 toughness to work with than 3 damage in the Divine Shield. We'll see how our opponent reacts to the Yeti here. We're not in a super great position. It's not bad by any means, but this game is obviously very different from last game. You guys can see that, right? Our opponent has kept up with our board a lot better. He hasn't really been messing around with his curve as much. He has not invested in card draw early. And the result is that we are on fairly equal footing. Dare I even say the opponent is a little bit ahead because he does have that Fiery Borax still equipped. So a Borax equipped and a Shredder versus a Yeti at the end of his turn 5. That's not bad. That's just better than our board. So we're going to have to step up a little bit here. The first thing that comes to mind here is to play the Scarlet Crusader for sure, and then the Argent Squire, and going face for 4. Popping the Shredder I think is a bad idea, simply because the things you are going to be putting on the table are very weird for the Shredder to trade into. So we put down the Squire, we put down the Scarlet Crusader, and we go face for 4. And then the only point of debate is, do you play the Flame Juggler? If the Flame Juggler hits the Shredder, it gives him a weird, kill. He has to put a 4-2 in a 2-3. But if the Flame Juggler misses, he gets a free kill. Also, the opponent could just use his face into the Flame Juggler. So we're gonna opt to play around both mind control tech and, you know, the fact that the juggler is not really doing work and that the juggler is just gonna die to the axe. So we're just gonna hero power here and invite our opponent to use his charge of the fiery war axe onto a less desirable target. There's not really... okay, so he hits in. That's already good for us. Opponent is already at 15 health. That's something quite good to keep track of. He does have Whirlwind, which is normally not a great card, but was an amazing card here. It pretty much destroyed us right now, because I mean, the scary thing is that post Whirlwind, he still had 5 mana. It's like, oh damn. He does a reversing switch here. He makes his own Yeti with taunt. It's not bad, right? Rather have a 4/5 than a 5/4, but turns out that our pit fighter matches up really nicely with it, so it's not like super relevant because he still has the 2 damage on this guy to trade in. So once again, same argument. The Flame Juggler isn't really doing that much, so I'd rather just hero power here and pass. Get him a bit lower. We are still Hunter because we don't want our opponent to stack up armor. We want to kind of nullify his hero power. And there's a Hogger. You know, it's the game is looking kind of grim right now, but our opponent just misplayed. What is the correct play here? Use the Heckler and the Stalker into the Pit Fighter. Keep the 1/1 on the table. Spawn a 2/2. That way, it's a lot harder for us to reach the Hogger. But our opponent gets greedy and decides to deal 4 face damage instead, which I think is incorrect. Now there is way more chance that this Hogger is going to die, and we have a little bit of a cheeky play here. It's a play that I personally love to do. First of all, you know, we drew the Cobra, so I was like, ooh, nice, we can Cobra Ram Wrangler, but I was like, we can't, we gotta kill Hogger. And there's a fairly easy way to kill the Hogger. We can use our own spare part, the Rusty Horn, to target his Hogger, give it taunt, thus kind of disabling the other 2 minions their taunt, because taunt doesn't do anything for the Hogger if he himself has taunt, and then we just take him down. So punishing our opponent for that misplay, for the kind of the greedy, the route of dealing the 4 face damage, rather than double trading into our minion and giving his Hogger more chances of survival. So there we go. Put down the Flame Juggler, put down the Illuminator. It just suits the mana a lot better. We could have also put down the Cobra, but the Cobra right now is an activator for our Ram Wrangler, so we want to ensure that we get a beast out of our Ram Wrangler rather than, you know, just having to put it down as a Grim Patron that doesn't do anything. You know, that's not really that great of a 5-drop. Alright, so our opponent's playing fairly conservative here. He uses the hero power. So far, fairly straightforward. Puts down a Trog. It's gonna float 2 mana here. That's fine. Okay, so we draw a second Ram Wrangler. Well, I mean, if we get a big beast out of the Ram Wrangler, the chance is fairly decent that we get another beast next turn out of Ram Wrangler. So at this point, the Ram Wranglers are pretty good. We get him a Lorn, which is really, really good. So that's why I say Ram Wrangler. I mean, right now I think around 20% of the beasts are legendaries. I think that's what Epiphany said at the time. So it's not that bad of a chance for you to get lucky here. Yeah, you can get on the other end of the spectrum and draw an Angry Chicken, or you can pull him a Lorn, or King Crush, or you know, there's plenty of other great beasts. You can even pull a Mookless Champion. Which, if you have mana left for hero power, is pretty sweet. Sorry, guys. I have this automated yawn response when I'm talking all the time. I think it's my body saying like, hey, shut up for a second. Alright, cool. So we do spawn the mics now, which is, you know, I feel like our opponent's getting rather unlucky. I feel like he had a fairly decent chance to win the game, but then he screwed it up with the Hogger, and now we're getting good RNG. So I think that he could have been in a better spot if he had just preserved his Hogger. I don't think that even our good RNG would win it then for us. But because he made that misplay earlier with the Hogger, right now we are in a position where we can come back into the game and grab the board a bit better. So the clear here is fairly simple. Cobra goes into the Heckler, Malorn goes into the 3/3. And yeah, I mean, we have a very respectable board. There is a Malorn on the table that needs to die, so he's going to have to put his Shredder in there. And then we still have Maexna left to deal with all kinds of stuff. So right now his most likely trade is... oh, my mind is going to cleave first. Hit. Okay. So he was trying to hit the Malorn with a cleave, and oh, I remember this moment. We got another Malorn out of Web Spinner, so at this point I was like, yeah, well, I mean, this is a... I feel like since TGT, these kind of games have become a bit more frequent. It's not that the game is pure luck now, of course, but I feel like there's slightly more games where you're just like, okay, well, that's just ridiculous, right? I mean, Spellslinger can give you more random things. Ramwrangler gives you random things. Add Web Spinner, you know, the card introduced earlier, of course. The more RNG there is in the game, the more chance there is to have all that RNG together. And then let's face it, this was a pretty RNG-ish match. Pulling 3 legendaries from 2 Ramwranglers and a Web Spinner is considered fairly ridiculous, right? So definitely got carried by the RNG in the latter half, but I stand with my original point. If our opponent had not misplayed earlier, that Hogger would have kept spawning dudes, and it would have been a lot more difficult for us to get back onto the board that way. But yeah, now of course, normally we've kind of run out of gas, but that is really no problem now. Okay, so we summon the Malorn, we go face for 2, we hero power, that way our opponent is in range of dying next turn. We could develop the Alec, but he can just remove the Alec with the Worgen, so hero powering is strictly better than the Alec in terms of damage output. The Worgen right now isn't doing anything, it's not killing Malorn, it's not killing Maexna, so why would we expose the Alec to the Worgen when we can just hero power and set up lethal? Right, there it is, hero power is at 11, and we have 11 damage on the table, plus our hero power for 13, so pretty easy. GGG. And with easy, I mean pretty easy when you get a Malorn. We lose the Joust, but who cares, right? Let's just go for the lethal. We were trying to see if we could find the other Malorn, just to make it even more ridiculous. It'd be really funny. Alright guys, GG, well played. I gotta say that, those Ramwranglers did come up very big in this game. Pretty ridiculous, those Ramwranglers. But hey, that's Hearthstone. Sometimes you have really bad RNG, sometimes you have really good RNG, and it's up to the good player to try to make the best out of both scenarios. Try to capitalize as much as possible on your good RNG, and try to minimize the impact of bad RNG by making good decisions throughout the entire game. Because I really want to push that point here that if our opponent had made a better decision earlier, his quote-unquote bad RNG of us getting good RNG wouldn't have mattered as much, because he had more turns of that Hogger just spawning minions. And I'm not saying that he would have won, but that's kind of the message that I want to convey to you guys, is that yes, the game is definitely full of RNG mechanics here and there. Just, the fact that you draw your cards in a random order is RNG, but you playing well removes as much RNG off the table and makes you less vulnerable to that RNG, which is going to give you a better average. And that's what we're all doing it for, right, guys? We try to get infinite in the arena, and being infinite does not mean that you get 7+ wins every time. It does mean that on average you have 7 wins or more. All right, guys. Awesome to talk to you guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Also, don't forget to subscribe if you do enjoy these videos. It does help me out. Okay, guys, I will catch you all tomorrow.